Hey, today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite tarot decks. These are my personal choices, so if a deck you like isn't on this list, I'm sorry about that. There are many decks and out in the world, many. I tend to prefer decks with more detailed symbolism or ones that have a clear artist vision, or they bring something new to the table. So keep this in mind. Near the end of the video, I'm going to mention a few tarot books that I think are invaluable if you're interested in tarot. And we will touch a little bit on each of them. First, let's talk about what I see tarot as, because I think everyone has a slightly different idea of what they think the tarot cards are, or even what divination is. As far as the tarot, I would say that the tarot is a book, and it's also been called a book many times. The Tarot of the Bohemians, or the Book of Thoth, sometimes it's called. But with that said, I think that it's a book that shifts its pages to accommodate the person that's reading it at the time that they do a reading. So the book is constantly changing. As a bookmaker myself, I'm quite fascinated by that, because typically a book has, a bound spine, and the person that creates the book has a strong intent of the order in which it is read. In this case, I think the universe is actually the author of the book, kind of, and it's kind of relating what it wants you to understand at the moment. What I don't think it is a fortune-telling device. I think that many people see it that way, like, oh, you're going to have 3 kids, or this is going to happen to you, or that's going to happen to you. But I disagree with this. I think it's more about being a psychological tool that gives advice or can define certain situations or phases in your life. And I think that it only gives you what you put in, or what your current awareness can decipher from it. So the more you know about the cards and yourself, the more knowledge can be gained by the reading, I think. And I guess I should say this: all decks have slightly different uses, I think. There's not just one use for the tarot. Some decks focus more on the abstract, on the feelings behind the cards. These decks are more about the impressions left, I think, by the images, and less about the symbols that are contained. Other decks focus on the story. These are sort of more based around myth, and these decks are more about archetypes that are contained in the cards. The final type of deck, I think, focuses on the symbolism and the details of those symbols. In these decks, there are vast interpretations and correlations that are related to things like astrology or Kabbalah, numbers, Gnosticism, and mythology also. So with that in mind, let's dive in, and I will talk about my 10 favorite decks. At number 10, we have a deck called the Tarot Pack. by the artist Ithel Cahoon. I think I'm saying that correctly. And it's from the year 1977. Cahoon was a British painter, occultist, and poet, an author. Stylistically, her artwork was affiliated with Surrealism, but they expelled her because she refused to renounce her association with occult groups. Makes me kind of proud of her. She preferred the spell the tarot, T-A-R-O, because she believed it kept with the deck's suspected Egyptian origins. She also believed that the cards could help people attain a higher state of consciousness. Now, what I think is best about these cards is the colorful, sort of emotive quality of them. I think that the abstract nature of the images lends itself well to a sort of simplified reading of just like how you feel. On the obverse of that, I think that's something I also kind of dislike about these cards, is that there's just not enough to grab onto as far as the reading. So in that way, there's some beautiful images, but I think that the cards are lacking a little bit. So that's why they're at number 10 for me. At number 9, we have the Hidden Message Tarot. This is a newer deck, and it's created by Julien Picot. I think I'm saying that right. He is a French designer who, has created many illustrations and other work in Paris. This deck is from 2020, so like I said, it's very new. His primary medium is digital collage, so I have a strong affinity to this deck because of my own artwork. I can't seem to find why it's called the Hidden Message Tarot deck, so if someone knows, maybe they can leave that in the comments. But as far as I can tell, this deck was in a limited run, and it's sold out. So good luck finding it, but the images are beautiful, and you can check out his website. I linked in the description if you'd like to see the cards. I think, primarily this is an update of the Rider-Waite deck, which is a deck I will talk about later. The images are great. They're beautiful. So in that regard, I think this is a strong deck. It is a bit pricey. It's expensive when you could buy it. So that might be one of the things I dislike about it. I've never actually used the deck. I've only seen the images of it, but I would like to use it sometime. It's quite beautiful. At number 8, we have the Surrealist Tarot, and this was made between the years 1940 and 1941 by mainly the artist Andre Breton, but here is a list of several of the other artists that were involved in the deck. In designing the deck, I think they wanted to sort of reject the traditional courtly cards that are in like the Rider-Waite deck, which is more of a medieval theme. And they decided to put their own heroes here instead, which is quite comical and very in line with the surrealist sort of Dada aesthetic. So as you can see, there's lots of famous personalities like Freud and the Marquis de Sade and Baudelaire and a few others. What I can say about this deck that I like is that I'm a big fan of several of these artists, so it's really interesting to see them sort of tackle this. What I don't like about this deck is that it's a little too close to a traditional playing card deck, and some of the images are a bit plain, I guess. As a curiosity, I think it's quite interesting, but I don't think I would use it in my daily practice. The website Dangerous Minds has a great article on this deck if you want to learn some more about it. I've linked it in the description. Number 7 is also by a famous artist, Salvador Dali. This is the Dali Tarot, and it's from 1984. According to legend, film producer Albert Broccoli commissioned Dali to create a custom deck of tarot cards for a prop for the James Bond film Live and Let Die. Eventually the contract fell through, but Dali finished the cards anyway. And if you like Salvador Dali, you're going to love these cards. It has all of Dali's madness, and of course, you know, his own likeness is featured on the Magician card, which is very Dali. But maybe that's the thing that's bad about these cards too, is that, you know, they definitely feed sort of the Dali ego. If you know anything about him, you know that his ego is quite large. So these cards are they're beautiful, but you know, they kind of veer towards that. One other thing I don't like about this deck is that the paintings seem a little hastily made. Dali's early work is quite brilliant, and I think that maybe he spent a lot more time on those paintings than he did on the tarot cards. So that's a bit of a nitpick, but it's something that I noticed. At number 6, we have The Magician Longs to See, the Twin Peaks Tarot deck. This is from the year 2016, and the artist is Benjamin McKay. I'm a big fan of Twin Peaks, so I really love these. The TV show is filled with all kinds of occult symbolism, and it's on full display in his version of these cards. It's amazing how well the characters from the show fit into the archetypes of the tarot. You know, Dale Cooper being the magician, and you know, Andy being the fool, and all the other cards. But it's just really brilliant the way that he tied it all together. And really, there's not much to dislike about these cards. I just think they're amazing. At number 5, we have the Amano Tarot deck, and that's from 1991 by the artist Yoshitaka Amano. Obviously, that's a Japanese artist. And these cards are just stunning. I've lived in Korea for the past 10 years or so, and I've been to Japan a few times, and Japanese design aesthetic to me is just almost sort of fragile and elegant, and it is embraced in these cards. Apparently there's some kind of hidden message that solves the riddle of this mysterious world, but I don't know how you get to that. Apparently the artist came into prominence in the late 1960s working on the anime adaptations of Speed Racer. He later became famous for his work on Gatchaman and Vampire Hunter D. An animation I think is quite good. And he also worked on Final Fantasy. So I think if you like sort of anime or Japanese culture, you will be very pleased with these cards. There's not too much to dislike here. The only thing that I can sort of point out is that there's not much information on the internet about these cards. There's a book that's in Japanese, but I wasn't able really to find much that was in English. So if you know of anything and you want to comment in the comments, I would appreciate it. At number 4, we have the Marseille deck from the year about 1500. They're not certain of the exact year, and they're also not certain of the original artist, but many other artists have made versions of these. The original ones were French woodblock prints, sometimes colored by hand or by stencil. According to legend, these were created as a playing card deck first, and then they sort of became the tarot. So like clubs and spades, hearts and diamonds are actually in the cards. What I like about this is sort of the historical aspect of this deck. And it sort of shows the roots of the tarot, I guess. What I dislike about them is that they're a little plain. And I put them so high on this list because of their place in history, mostly. The next three decks are my favorite decks that I actually use in my practice, or I've used in the past. The first is number 3, which is called the Mythic Tarot, and that's from 1986, and I actually think I got my first deck not too long after that. The artist is Trisha Newell, and the designers are Liz Green and Juliet Sharman Burke. I love this deck. I was gifted it when I was about 18 by my girlfriend at the time, and it really sparked my lifelong interest in the tarot, so I can thank her for that. Thank you, Glenda. And it has, you know, just all of the great Greek myths, all the archetypal sort of characters and stories. The mythology adds an extra layer of meaning, which I really enjoy. And the set comes with a 224-page book that's illustrated, and it really, in detail, talks about all the myths and what it means in relation to the tarot. It also came with a Celtic cross fabric with the spread printed on it, which was very useful at the time because I was new to the tarot, and it was hard to remember where the cards went and what they meant and everything. That really helped. So I highly recommend this deck, especially for beginners, because most people already know the Greek myths, so this kind of helps you in your readings in terms of understanding the sort of allegory of the cards. And I think the myths add a great level of sort of pathos, because, you know, they're all tragedies mostly, so it makes you sort of understand that life is a bunch of struggles and ordeals, and that's kind of what the tarot is about. Aside from the myths, the deck doesn't have the same kind of symbolic details that the last two decks on my list have, so I will get to the top two right now. At number 2, we have the Rider-Waite deck from 1909. And the artist was Pamela Coleman Smith, and the designer is A.E. Waite. This is possibly the most famous tarot deck in the world, and it goes by many names. It goes by the Waite-Smith deck, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the Rider Tarot deck. Rider was the company that commissioned it. The symbols and imagery were influenced by the 19th century magician and occultist Eliphas Levi, as well as by the teachings of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So these cards are steeped in sort of the magical tradition. Most versions came with a book by Waite called The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and this includes his interpretations and descriptions of the symbols, and I've linked this in the description if you want to check it out. So what I really like about this deck is sort of the striking design. It's very iconic. You've seen it on many memes and t-shirts. Aside from the last deck on my list, I think this is the best if you're serious about the tarot and you want to really get into the symbolism and how it relates to magical thought. So I highly recommend this deck. As far as things I don't like about it, there's not much actually, and the only reason it's number 2 is because number 1 is so amazing that it bumps it out of the number 1 spot. So at number 1 we have the Thoth Tarot deck by Aleister Crowley and Lady Frida Harris. It was created in 1942, but it wasn't published until 1960. I adore this deck. I mean, that's, to put simply, it's just definitely the best tarot deck. It's just beautiful. The paintings are beautiful. It's rich in symbolism. The research that went into creating the deck, I'm mainly in awe of pretty much every time I use it. I'm going to show you, here's my deck actually, and I'm going to show you a few of my favorite cards real quick before we talk about it. I love, these are the cards I really love, like the Tower. It's just beautiful. And that one, just love it. This is on several of the covers for the tarot book. And the Hierophant, very cool too. Lust, beautiful card. And the Magus. Crowley revolutionized the tarot. He took it to a different level. He made some changes to the traditional names, and he also changed some of the suit cards in the minor arcana. He changed the knights to princes and the pages to princesses. Among the trump cards, the major arcana, he changed strength to lust and temperance to art. And he did this mainly because of his interest in the Kabbalah and his instruction from the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and stuff that he did in the OTO. So the cards are full of deep symbolism, and he uses symbols from astrology and the Kabbalah all over the place, really, to deepen the meaning of the cards. To understand these cards, I think it's invaluable to read his handbook called the Book of Thoth, link in the description. And it's also invaluable to read some of his other works, like Liber 777 and the Book of the Law and Book 4. And also, I think if you check out Israel Regardie, who was his secretary, he also published a book called The Middle Pillar, which really helps reveal a lot of the symbolism in these cards. They're just gorgeous. There's not enough I can say about how gorgeous they are. I really enjoy all the details. And as far as anything I dislike, there's nothing really. I adore it, and I use it almost every time I do a reading now. In my 20s, I mainly used the Mythic Tarot deck and sometimes the Rider-Waite deck. But I would say pretty much from my late 20s up until the current day, I've basically used this deck. So I've gotten quite adept at using it, and the way that I did that was primarily through reading a lot of books. The best one, for me anyway, is this book. This is the Crowley Tarot, the Handbook of the Cards, by Akron and Heijo Bonzoff. I think that's how you say his name, or her name, I'm not sure. This book is just excellent. I'm going to put a few images on the screen from this book and show you just how detailed this thing gets. And it's just, if you really, really want to understand the tarot and understand yourself, I highly recommend this. Here you see the High Priestess card, which is the number 2 card of the deck. And at the top it shows the actual card, but it also gives you sort of the goals or the guiding principles behind it, and it gives sort of a light side and a shadow side. And then when the description does, it sort of breaks down the card And the first part is the foundation, so it gives you sort of just the real basic idea of what the card represents. And then it goes into the analysis and description. So it talks about sort of each symbol, like in this case it's the figure of the High Priestess, then her sort of veiled portion and the arrow, and then the unveiled portion. Then it talks about the background and several of the other symbols like the lines, the ellipsoids, and the moon crescents. And then it goes into the foreground, so the flowers, fruits, crystals, and camel symbols. And then after it gets through all of the symbolic parts, then it goes into sort of the interpretations about the card, and it gives you sort of a background and a general interpretation. But then it also focuses in on if you're doing a reading for consciousness or your profession or relationships. And then at the end of the entry, it gives you all these correlations, so these sort of archetypes and symbols from different traditions that go with this, that correspond with this. And it's really invaluable, and I just adore it. Even gives you music to listen to, and some astrology stuff and gemstones, and even at the end there's a quotation from literature that sort of fits with the feeling of the card. Some other books that have also influenced me or helped me with this, I think, are Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot by Lon Milo Duquette, and the book Tarot Mirror of the Soul Handbook for the Aleister Crowley Tarot by Gerd Ziegler. That book is excellent too. So I put all the links in the description for these, and there's also one more that I recommend, and that is The Way of the Tarot by Alejandro Jodorowsky, the filmmaker. Also an excellent book. So I think that's about it. I think the tarot is, for me anyway, invaluable to my life. It has taught me so much about phases in life and how to get through them, big struggles and ways out of mazes. If you're new to the tarot, I highly recommend getting into it. If you're not new to the tarot and there's something in here that you want to comment on, feel free. And that's about it, I think. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.